Welcome back to Positively Diverse. This is Josie Gata-Aura, and today I'm absolutely thrilled to have Dhara on with me, and we're going to have such an interesting conversation, which I hope you guys really enjoy. Dhara, welcome to Positively Diverse. Thank you so much for being here today. Before I tell the audience the content of what we're going to be discussing, do you want to just tell us your name and where you're from?
Yeah, hi, Judy. Thank you so much. I am really honored to have this conversation with you. I have been like a huge fan of the work that you do, and I have followed you on social media for over a year now. So this is like really a great. I mean, I'm just thankful for having this conversation with you. So, as you introduced me, my name is Dhara. I go by pronouns she, her. I am an Indian and Canadian. Professionally, I am a licensed paralegal here in Ontario, Canada. And in addition to that, I'm also kind of other slashies. So I am an artist. I have some design and architecture background from India. I am a photographer. I also am an activist and an advocate for women's rights. And particularly, I'm passionate about like talking about the inequalities for South Asian women. And I also run a page on Instagram called Breaking Stereotypes, which basically focuses on telling such stories using the pictures that I take. So yeah, that's a little bit about myself, but really thank you for doing this with me today.
You're welcome. Thanks. And guys, you can see Dhara's photography behind her, which she's got a range of photography. It's beautiful. I've actually seen some of the artwork in a little bit more detail, and you can see more of that on her page. But for now, Dhara, you have touched on one of the things that we want to talk about, which is women's rights. We want to talk about, the acceptance of women, Indian women, South Asian women in places of, where they're living, and society, how society perceive women. And, a lot of the work that I'm doing is based around diversity and inclusion. And it does focus on visual skin conditions, but actually we shouldn't forget that women fall into that category of discrimination. But Dhara, tell me, why do you think that women fall into this trap and into this situation of not being accepted into where they are?
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's not just one thing. It's a layers of different things, and I think everything begins at home. So for me, for example, or for us at South Asian, it's not just about like being in like a mix of culture or being in the Western world where we kind of pop out because of the color of our skin. But I kind of feel like it just begins at home in terms of like how we are accepted, right? So for me, like for say, I've grown up in India, so it was always like, you are fighting with the inequalities around being a girl in India, right? So I kind of think like the whole thing starts within our homes, and like particularly with our culture, like the inequalities or the misogyny or the patriarchy is kind of like the foundation of where our struggles just kind of begin, right? So
So yeah, so this is just definitely not just a cultural thing. I mean, it's also the lack of education that people have, because there's almost like, well, it's been going on for generations. So this is the norm. This is how things should be, and this is how things are going to continue to be. And I suppose, when you have been brought up in that type of lifestyle, in that type of environment, sometimes it's very difficult to break out of that. What would you say then to people that are kind of experiencing this right now? Because I'm sure that many people watching this are going to say, right, but I'm stuck in this. I can't get out because this has been going on for many years, many generations. This is the environment I'm in that's been embedded. These values have been embedded into my culture. My culture is embedded into me, and it's hard to break out of this. I mean, what can we really do?
yeah, it's hard. Like
Yeah.
the most difficult thing I feel is to unlearn what you have been taught
Mm,
for years. So I completely get when you say that, like this is embedded, like it's not just the culture is kind of
yeah.
embedded into how we function, right? So the key I kind of feel is just being your true authentic self. Like don't kind of, want to change yourself, or like if you think that you are someone who wants to talk about the inequalities or like just stand out in whatever you are passionate about, like just be your authentic self. Like the minute we kind of deviate from that, like we are just going to lose it, right? But like you're right, like it's hard to unlearn, and because it's so difficult and it's so embedded into you, you are going to have to make that conscious effort to kind of not feed into whether it's the misogyny or the stereotypes or the patriarchy, right? So it is just being about, mindful, being aware, being consciously taking steps to kind of not feed into the stereotypes. But definitely it's not like a manual, or like, you just follow these steps and everything's going to be fine. It's hard just because it's a part of the culture which is embedded into how we function, right? So
And it's a lot harder, to stand up and speak up to the older generation. I think even living in the 21st century, and you're living in Canada and I live in the UK, but there's still that element of respect towards your elders in speaking up as well is, it is seen as, not polite, standing out of your place. You shouldn't be doing that because, back in the day, girls were sort of seen to be there, be present, but not be heard. And, to have a voice and to speak up. I've met so many girls across my platform who've opened up to me and said, I've got vitiligo and I'm struggling because there's so much pressure on me to get married. There's pressure because my family don't think there's anyone good enough that's going to marry me because of my skin, and they're referring to someone good enough meaning someone else marrying their daughter. Like, I just think this is so difficult, just being a girl, and then on top of that having challenges of a visual skin condition on top of that. Can you imagine, Dara,
yeah.
how some people are feeling? So we want to normalize stigma. We want to normalize this feeling of, what we're going through. But, how do women do this successfully? Like for yourself, you move from Canada, you move from India to Canada. We're going to talk about your experience a little bit more next week. But for today, I just want to focus on this just general conversation on women and their experiences of just fitting in, really, and why there are so many challenges presented. What other things have you come across that have made you really question this topic?
Yeah, so no, you made some great points, like in terms of the pressure, or like, you having these conversation with people, like just women in our culture, and on top, like having a skin condition that visually makes you a little bit different than how the so-called normal is. So I kind of feel like fitting in is basically, to me, how I see is like is unique to each one of us, right? Like you try to fit into something where basically you're trying to get acceptance. For example, for you, probably you're talking about like being accepted for how you look with your vitiligo. For me, for example, the way I try to fit in is because I stood out for raising my voice when it comes to the inequalities, or when it comes to not accepting the misogyny or feeding into the patriarchy. So in that sense,
Yeah.
like growing up, I kind of had to make an effort to blend in and to fit into the this whole culture about like not questioning, not raising your voice, like just going by what you're supposed to do, whether it's getting married, or whether having your education, or having a choice about like what you want to wear, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think like fitting in, it has to be unique to each one of us, and it's exclusive in terms of like how it kind of interprets or plays for you, and it kind of plays different for each one of us. But that's how literally fitting in is basically you don't belong in it, but you are trying to make a conscious effort because you want to be accepted into this so-called normal. And it definitely has like a lot of negative impact on you. And I'm sure like you've talked, like I've seen your different videos and like your conversations with others, and I've read like a lot about what you do, and I am pretty sure like you've talked about how it impacted your own mental health because you were trying to force yourself
Yeah.
into being something where you didn't belong, right? And the minute you kind of break that, it's liberating, right? So I kind of, for me too, it has been the same, like because I was constantly trying to be around things where I was supposed to not question and just kind of accept it, it has impacted my mental health. And in a way, you kind of just, um, you take it as your own shortcomings, you internalize it in some sense. So definitely that happens. You're always kind of hard on yourself where, anything that you do for yourself, you just feel like you're second guessing because you're in a way like kind of gaslighted by this whole stereotype around,
Yeah.
the fitting in or like the normal. So it definitely is unique to each one of us, but it also has like negative impacts because you're trying to be someone that you're not. And I'm sure like you would have a lot to add because you have been through this whole cycle. So
Yeah.
maybe you might want to tell me a little bit.
No, absolutely, Dara. Like you touched on two things that I just want to bring up before I talk about myself. But you talked about women and, that they haven't got a voice and they find it difficult to speak up. And that all comes down to this subservient, submissive role model of a woman who is perceived as, perfect in the South Asian culture. Because when you're submissive, you're tolerant. When you're tolerant, you put up with rubbish. When you put up with rubbish, you're quiet and you're perfect because you don't necessarily, you're not someone, if you voice how you feel, you say how you feel, you're someone who's outspoken. It goes against that kind of norm of what is, acceptable. We have this norm in the South Asian community of what's acceptable
Absolutely.
with the figure and with the look, but that also goes with the personality, that subservient, quiet, submissive person who's just, doesn't say a word, just there to be pretty, and that's all you're good enough for, really. Well, actually, things have changed, times have changed, and yes, it does impact the second point that you made about mental health, because when you're going through all of these difficulties, it does impact on your mental health significantly. Mental health is a buzzword. We use it so frequently. We use it so very frequently, but I think we need to be mindful of how we use this word. Now, for me, vitiligo was very psychological. So when it appeared on my skin, it took away my pigments, and it made me question a lot about my identity. And it made me question who I was. So already living in the UK, I already felt very westernized. But then also having that melanin stripped away from me then made me question my identity even more. But do you have to necessarily be brown to have your identity? No, you don't. But this is part of this is how I've always seen myself. My skin has never changed until I was 21. So it has had a huge impact on my life, and and because it's constantly changing and evolving, it does make me feel sometimes quite anxious. And even though I've accepted my skin, I have these areas on my body where the pigment sometimes comes back and it goes. It's always changing. And I think people just need to be mindful, when you have a pimple or a scar or a birthmark or a mole that suddenly appears and you're like, wow, this has just suddenly appeared. Well, birthmarks, not birthmarks, because birthmarks tend to be there for a while, but when you have these other things that just appear on your body and you just become anxious over them, you wonder, gosh, what is this? Imagine this white patch just spreading and spreading and spreading, and you don't know if it's going to grow, if it's going to stay the same size. And coming from a South Asian background, where people do look and judge, it's very difficult to deal with, very difficult. And that's why I covered for many years, Dara, because that was my coping mechanism, because essentially that was the way I felt I would be able to get through stigmas, judgment, verbal conversations, verbal questioning. I didn't want that confrontation. I didn't know what Auntie G was going to ask me next. I didn't know if it was going to hurt my feelings. I wasn't strong enough to actually tackle it. But when you are strong enough to tackle it, when you are strong within yourself, do you not find, Dara, that you're actually ready to sort of take on things? You can respond in a very diplomatic way and you can express yourself. And having a voice comes down to representation. Women have equal rights to men. Times are changing. Women work. I mean, my husband, he works, he helps in the house, he looks after the children. Our roles are very equal, very equal. I would hope that, you know, even if, you know, women are not working, I would hope that their husbands support them, because it's not easy being at home. It's not easy raising kids. It's not easy having these roles. And women are more than that now. That's what I love. Women are more than raising babies. You know, I mean,
Yes,
it's an amazing job to be a mother, but you know, we have a lot more to
absolutely.
give, a lot more to offer than cooking rotis on the tawa, you
Oh my
know.
God. Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I shamefully don't know how to make a round roti yet. Yeah, and you know, I'm 43 years old, but that's not my, you know, that's not my goal in life, to make a round roti or to like
And it
cook.
shouldn't be for anyone. Yeah.
I can cook Indian food. It's good enough. My family eat it. It tastes good, right? You
You're
know, they
full
love my
fed,
food.
you're fed.
It's not five-star cuisine, you know, uh, white dining every day, but I cook good food. And I think, you know what, I'm doing the best I can. And, you know, I think these days people and women need to have more respect. There needs to be more understanding. And I don't know, I feel like things do need to evolve a little bit more, Dara.
Yeah, no, you made some great points here. I just want to touch on a couple of things before we kind of end. First of all, I want to tell you, you are brave. You are amazing in terms of like how you have like put out yourself out there, talking about like from trying to fit in by covering yourself because you thought that's the standard. Otherwise, an auntie is going to judge me for, you know, how I visually appear. So from, you know, your days of like trying to fit in to now like being your liberated self, where you are taking over the media, or like you're doing these
Yeah,
interviews or being on the TV and putting yourself out there. So I
yeah.
do want to tell you, you are brave, and you probably have been brave all along, because
Oh,
had you not like been brave, you wouldn't have
yeah,
being here where you are right now, right? So I want to give you a huge shout out for doing what you are doing and what you have done. But you and just kind of closing on it, yeah, you're absolutely right. We are so much more as women than just like making rotis, or like, and it's okay if someone chooses to make rotis, like it's okay, but like it shouldn't be a norm. It shouldn't be
yeah,
what decides who
yeah,
we are as women. And we are
yeah,
so much more. And like the gender role conversation is something we can go on and on and on, but like just to comment, like cooking is a life skill. It
yeah,
shouldn't be like a gender role. It shouldn't be specific to me being a
yeah,
woman or someone being a man. Like it is a life skill. Like as long as you have to survive, you are going to need to cook and you are going to feed yourself. So yeah, no, we are so much more than like what our culture defines us to be. And shout out to you and like other women who are doing out there, who are going out there, changing the narrative, changing the perspective, and like putting yourself out there. It's not easy, but like you guys are doing it so that people can
yeah,
eventually, you know, kind of connect with you and see that it's okay to not make rotis, and it's okay to talk about like your skin condition, or it's okay to kind of be different and just accept yourself. So yeah, kudos to you for doing that.
Thanks, Dara. It's been really great talking to you as well and getting your insight into what you think about this topic. Thank you so much again for joining me today. Next week, guys, we're going to look into having a little bit more of a profound conversation with Dara and find out her thoughts and views on what it's like to fit in and how life has been for Dara living in Canada and life living in India. So, guys, don't forget to tune in next week to Positively Diverse. We're going to really delve into some deeper issues with Dara. I hope you enjoyed the conversation today. If you've got any comments or questions, don't forget to pop them in the box below, and we will both try and answer them for you as soon as we can. Thank you so much for tuning in, guys, and see you next week. Thank you guys for watching my YouTube channel. I hope you enjoyed the content for today. If there's something that you want to watch, something you want to see, something you want to hear, or you want to share a story with me, don't forget to pop it in the comments below. And if you like the video you saw today, don't forget to hit the like button below. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next week.